Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Netling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Netling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring subjects, topics, and guests that will help empower you to grow your business and take it to the next level. Today, my guest is Jamin Heppell, and let me tell you about Jamin. He is a co-creator and leadership coach of mountains and marathons. Yes, interesting. Which is a revolutionary leadership development company that focuses on holistic transformation and completes each program with an epic physical challenge, such as running a marathon or climbing a mountain in an iconic location around the world. Although I'd like to go to an iconic location, I don't know how I'd be with running a marathon or climbing a mountain, but let's delve more into that. The theme that I chose for this is live and lead in alignment. And this interests me because being a project manager, I often think about how we can be in alignment. So it should be very intriguing to see how we spin this. Please join me in welcoming Jamin Heppell. Okay, Heppell. So I said it wrong. I knew I was going to say it wrong. Could you just say your name so that the audience actually hears it properly pronounced?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Vicki. Yeah, so Jamin Heppell is how you pronounce it. It's all good.
Jamin Heppell. Awesome. Okay. From your accent, I know I don't need to ask this question, but tell the audience where you live.
Cool. So as of right now, I am back home in Australia with my parents. Just celebrated Christmas, and my youngest brother's getting married in 3 months, so I'm sticking around for a little bit to be the celebrant for his wedding. But I've actually been nomadic for the last 5 years, so the longest I've lived in one single accommodation has been 3 months, and I've lived in 45 different countries around the world since May 2018.
Wow, that's awesome. You're the third person I've interviewed that gave up a house and a home and has just traveled the world. This is so cool. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to get right into it. How do you combine mountains and marathon to coach leadership? Tell us, where did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, and how does it all work together?
Was there alcohol involved in it?
No, so the origins. So I'll speak to like how mountains and marathons came to be, and then how taking on these epic physical adventures and leadership thread together. So, I grew up in a small country town, a little town of about 7,000 people, where sport and leadership were my two big passions growing up. And so by the age of 17, I'd been the house captain, the football captain, the basketball captain, and eventually the school captain. And so there'd been these threads of sport and leadership the whole way through. And when I was 17, I was really fortunate to be invited onto a 6-day leadership development program for young people across the state I grew up in called Victoria. Mm-hmm. And it was led by 12 passionate volunteer facilitators who effectively introduced me to this foundation of leadership development and personal growth, like the 101 for teenagers. And anyhow, something sparked inside of me during that week where I got really in touch with a vision for what I wanted to do with my life and how I wanted to contribute to my community. And so that then caused for the initial spark of the genesis of my first leadership development organization called Game Changers, which looked at leadership in grassroots sport. And then that transpired into another nonprofit organization called the Man Cave, where we'd go into work with boys and young men in schools around deconstructing, challenging, redefining masculinity. And then by the age of 26, I'd worked with about 15,000 young people across Australia and North America through speaking, coaching, and facilitation. And I also hit a place of severe burnout. I was going, and always in this kind of service and work mode, but not actually stopping to take a breath and take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, in July of 2016 when I had a bit of a breakdown, had my hands, bawling my eyes out, and really feeling quite sorry for myself. And it was in this moment of breakdown when I had a simple but profound epiphany, which is an acknowledgement that a recognition that I created my suffering. Like I created everything that I was dealing with. And so from this place of recognizing that I was the creator of all of it, it was both confronting and very empowering, because I also acknowledged, well, okay, if I created this mess, I can create my way out of it. So then I asked myself the question, okay, well, if I could do anything in the world right now, what would I actually be doing? And at this stage, I'd spent pretty much my entire life in one small part of Australia, and had done very little international travel, and had always aspired to test my physical boundaries and see what I was capable of, but had never given myself a chance to test that. And so I asked that question, if I could actually do anything in the world right now, what would I be doing? And within 5 minutes, I had a really powerful download, which was, okay, I'd be running marathons, climbing mountains, traveling the world, transforming my life, and working out some way to help other people do the same. And so I then spent 3 hours downloading this vision, and I called it Mountains. I called it Mountains and Marathons. Now, I won't say the rest is history, but in its essence, for the last 5 years, me and my business partner, Jen, have been building this transformational leadership development company, Mountains and Marathons, where we facilitate 6-month holistic journeys of transformation for people, where they graduate their experience by joining us in some epic part of the world, where they will climb a mountain or run a marathon, such as Mount Kilimanjaro, or perhaps a marathon in Patagonia or Cape Town, South Africa, and many other amazing parts of the world.
That sounds so awesome. And, as you were talking about that, earlier we were discussing, our target audience, and a lot of the women that I speak with are people that are suffering from burnout and going and don't know, and have that meltdown. So it is something that is kind of universal, that lack of self-care, that we just forget about everybody. Remember, the oxygen mask goes to you first, right?
Totally. I mean, burnout, it's perpetually, and it's perpetual and pervasive. And if we look at, particularly if we look at women in particular, who I see tend to suffer from burnout more frequently than men, and it is often because of the multitude of roles and responsibilities that women through societal patterns take on. And so it's this theme of being of service and giving. And as you just described it, not putting on the oxygen mask on self to take care of self first, and ensure that I am in good health and that I am in alignment. And so, naturally, there's a number of people who are navigating burnout who are attracted to the program, because it's for many people, it's the first time they ever make an investment of time, money, and energy in themselves to support them living into their greatest expression of self, or as we say in Mountains and Marathons, living in alignment.
And really, that brings to mind two things. One, I had a colleague that when COVID hit big time, not the initial, but the mid to 2020, early 2020, she was like, I'm now a mother, a housekeeper, a teacher, a wife, the cook, the cleaner. I can't do it all. And you just felt that weight, and how many other people had that, and how are they recovering from that? That's the first thing that came to mind. And the second thing is, the burnout piece, a lot of times we feel guilty of the self-care, of doing something for ourselves. What you and I do, it has a price to it, but often it's like, well, how much are you worth? And then that goes back to your confidence and your self-worth and everything. So do
Yeah.
you have that kind of hurdle that you have to take people over as they're going through your shop or your course?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful inquiry because, particularly when I'm in conversations with, people who are experiencing burnout and then getting underneath, okay, what's at the source of that? What's at the source of the burnout? And typically it is that theme of giving, and then not taking care of self. And if we then get underneath that, typically that stems from challenges around self-worth. And so if we want to kind of get to the nucleus or where the work really is to be done, it's around worthiness. And yet, if we look at the theme of making an investment of time, money, and in energy in oneself that is designed to support oneself to become a better, healthier, more empowered version of themselves, that can be a really challenging hurdle for people to jump because it will be labeled in their own mind as selfish. And the identity doesn't want to associate with this label or theme of selfishness or being selfish. And so then, okay, if I'm being selfish, well, then that comes layered with guilt. And so then it begins to perpetuate more of this like self-destructive pattern of like, I just want to keep giving. I've got nothing left to give, but then I'm also not willing to receive support to get over it. And so then we kind of become stuck in this pattern of, in a way, like helplessness. And so when you ask, like, is this something that we work with people on inside the Aligned Leadership Program? The reality is it's something that must be worked on before they say yes. Because in order for them to say yes, people need to have the breakthrough of I am choosing myself. And for many people, I'm choosing myself for the first time. And that's a really empowering place for someone to say yes to the Aligned Leadership Program, because it's like that in itself is a breakthrough simply by choosing self and allowing an investment to be made in oneself to become a more aligned, healthier, better version of themselves.
And that's so true of leadership. One of the things that I teach is I can't change you. Your behavior, what you are today, you took years to get there, and you were the one that decided to do that. And so it takes you to decide that you're going to change. And
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if we want to speak into that's one of the key things too, and you would experience this as well, Vicki, with your own coaching, is the nature of like the only way that we as coaches can be a contribution or service to anybody is if the person before us is willing to be coachable.
Yeah.
If they're going to show up inside of a spirit of I know everything, I know all my problems and I know how to fix everything. Okay, you've got what you need to continue living congruently with and getting the results you've been getting. Right. However, if someone is willing to show up inside of the of humility and be willing to be in a meaningful inquiry about maybe there's another way, or maybe something more expansive than what I'm currently living into is possible, well, then that's when we can do our job and actually be of meaningful service and facilitate transformation for people.
It's being able to look in the mirror and truly see. I think right. The Avatar movie that's just out, one of the sayings that they say to each other is, I see you. And I think that's so deep to be able to really look at another human being and say, I see you. And I think as a spouse, a partner, that sometimes that is what needs to help to propel you to agree that you need a change, you need help, you need to take care of you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's beautifully said in the nature of like at the foundational level, all human beings desire to be heard, seen, and understood.
Yeah.
And as far as the nature of like the work that we get to do as coaches is that often it's holding people in some of their most vulnerable moments and their most insecure, around some of the things they may hold the deepest levels of insecurity or shame around. And so, I experienced this for myself when with my coaches is simply that experience of being able to share openly and vulnerably about something that I'm navigating, and then having the experience of somebody else who I trust or choose to put my heart in their hands, and have them say, hey, I got you. Like, I see you, I hear you, I understand you. Like, that is just the most soothing thing for the nervous system. And like, if we're going to engage from the lens of, you know, each of us having an inner child, like there's a little boy inside of me that is simply always seeking love and belonging, even though I'm in the body of a man right now. Inside there is still a little boy that's just seeking love and belonging. And so that experience of having somebody else go, hey, I hear you, I see you, I understand you. It's like, whew, okay, safety and permission to be myself and to be in a meaningful inquiry and exploration of whatever it is, whatever insecurity I'm dancing with. We can actually get to the source of that, because I no longer have to have my guards up. And I think that is one of the most profound things that come with our industry, is the privilege that comes with holding people in some of their deepest vulnerability and having people, often for the first time, feel truly heard, seen, and understood.
Yeah, so true. So what would the top 2 types of self-development work would you recommend to the people that come to you and they're trying, they have seen the light, they know they need to transform? What would be the first 2 things that you would try to have them do?
Yeah, nice. Okay, so as a baseline, one of the most powerful paradigms for someone to get in touch with when stepping into this work of personal transformation, of inner transformation, is having the same realization that I got when I hit burnout, which is that of, I am the creator. Like, everything, like whatever's magical in my life, yep, I'm the creator. Whatever is not magical in my life, I am also the creator. Therefore, I am 100% responsible for life circumstance. And from this place, if we're really willing to take 100% responsibility for the quality of my life experience, of our life experience, well, from that place, we can then start being very intentional about how we then navigate our own inner transformation, recognizing that nothing out there needs to change in order for the experience of my life to shift. It's more so, how do I become more powerful in how I am responding to and navigating life as it is showing up for me. So that's the first part from a paradigm, that layer of taking complete responsibility. The next part, which I think is probably, it's helpful to speak into, is just the process that we guide people through inside the Aligned Leadership Program to ultimately support people to come into deeper alignment, which we define as living congruent with your truth, or having harmony between what we think, what we feel, what we say, and what we do, is the simple three-stage process that we guide people through over 6 months, which is that of clarity, clearing, and creation. Now, there might be other terms that we can give to this, but we simplify it with clarity, clearing, and creation. And what I mean by that is, in its essence, clarity is all about being deeply connected to and in touch with who I'm inspired to be and what I'm inspired to create in the world. So it's our vision of possibility of, like, if we could wave the magic wand and I could declare myself as who I want to be, it's like, this is it. So there's clarity. Then there's clearing. So clearing is really then looking at, okay, well, where are the layers of my life, my being, how I show up in the world? What are my patterns that get in the way of me living into this possibility? And so this is where, in the Aligned Leadership Program, we'll place a strong emphasis on looking at, okay, well, what are the beliefs that we hold that perhaps were established when we were a little kid around what's possible for me and what's not possible, or for the world, or for other people. We'll also look at childhood trauma, and just looking at the implications of the impacts of our nervous system, of our emotional body, where things might have happened where we created specific beliefs, but then also perhaps learned to repress and hold our emotional body back. And so we really look at the origins of that, and also train people in the emotional release and expressive tools to support people to move stuck emotional energy that's been there for decades, to then create more freedom. And then inside that, also expanding the somatic body's capacity to receive. So we look at beliefs, and we look at energetic and emotional blocks. And then we also look at the pragmatic structures of people's lives, and looking at, okay, well, where have we made a whole bunch of promises to people and not followed through on them? Because we call that spiritual dead weight, which is just baggage that we don't need to carry. So, this all exists in the theme of clearing, which, as you can imagine, is quite profound and powerful work when engaged with intentionality. And then the final piece that we teach and coach people through is the principles of creation. And so creation is really broken down into three primary areas. One is the inner game, which is all about expanding our somatic capacity to receive what the universe has to offer. The second part is the outer game, which is all about system structures, rhythms, and rituals that support our pragmatic life to be more aligned with what we actually want to create. And then the third part is community. So who are we actually surrounding ourselves with? What's the flavor of conversation that we're in? Are people around us, are they listening big of us? Are they supporting our goals and ambitions, or are they bringing them down? And so we have a meaningful inquiry into who are we surrounding ourselves with and cultivating friendship with. So with that clarity, clearing, creation, that's the journey that we guide people through to then ultimately complete with having a far stronger sense of an experience of living in alignment. And then we graduate with this big epic adventure where they run a marathon or climb a mountain as a pretty special way of celebrating the inner transformation, which comes through the coaching that I just spoke about, but then also the health side of things, which is stepping into our potential and knowing how to take care of our physical body. Because if we don't have baseline physical health, well, it doesn't matter how much inner work we do. It doesn't make actually being here in this material world much fun at all.
So you just talked about community. I'd want to spend a little bit more time there because, and as you mentioned, it's all around us. And I think the last 2.5 years has really highlighted the importance of community. But talk to us about, in your mind, what the importance of community is.
Yeah, nice. I mean, we, as human beings, we are not islands. We do not live in isolation. We are intrinsically all connected, and we cannot survive without one another. And so, given that that's just the way of human beings as social creatures, a worthy inquiry is like, well, okay, if connection and community is inherently necessary for us to not just survive, but it's necessary for us to thrive. Okay, well, how do we go about fostering community in a way that's going to support me to be at my best? And so one of the key principles that I live by and coach other people in is, first of all, cultivating the ability to listen big. And what I mean by listen big, listening, when I say the word listening, I'm talking about the way in which we relate to other people. And so when I listen big or relate big of another person, it means that in my presence, this person is related to as their potential. They're related to as an extraordinary human being. Versus when we listen small of people, it's like seeing them for their faults and where they're not capable and what they're not able to do. And the energetic impact of surrounding ourselves with those who listen small of us versus those who listen big of us has a material impact on what we step into and choose to get up to in the world. And so there are a couple of layers of this, because one is, first and foremost, we want to be doing the work for ourselves around, am I listening big of myself? Like, am I listening to myself as the potential that I am for the world and what I am capable of achieving? Because it doesn't matter how many people listen big of me. If I don't listen big of myself, it's not going anywhere. So it's important that we're doing the inner work, which is a lot of the work that I was just speaking about with clarity, clearing, and creation. But doubling down on community, it's a meaningful reflection to tune into who am I surrounding myself with, and then asking, does this person listen big of me, or do they listen small of me? And I would encourage anybody who is tuning into this reflection and really highlighting the people who listen big of them and deliberately fostering deeper connection with those individuals, because it's those individuals who are going to be a continual and perpetual fan flame and wind beneath your wings as you continue to step out and take on bold and exciting challenges. And you can feel it. You come off the back of a conversation with someone who listens big of you, and there's a sense of it's like it's been life-giving. It's like they've injected energy and vitality into you. Whereas if someone listens small of you, often you'll leave that engagement energetically and you'll feel a bit depleted. And so and you just look at the nature of energy as one of the key resources that we have to navigate and be within life. Like, I'm like, we want to be surrounding ourselves with like life force, and people who listen big of us are life-giving. And so from my standpoint, we want to be very intentional about who we're choosing to be in relationship with, give our time to, and give our energy to.
So great. I mean, everything that you said is so very true. The piece of our inner voice, we know that a lot of times the worst critic of ourselves is ourselves. I watched the Great British Baking Show, and the most recent one had this brilliant gentleman, and he was just doing masterful things. And each time there was that self-doubt and that, criticism of the fact that he didn't believe it was as good as it was. And I kept on saying to my daughter, he's not going to win. He's not going to win, because at some point he's going to let that talk him out of how great he is. And it happened. And it was so sad to see this brilliant person who let his doubt keep him from achieving the greatness that was in him. He needs you.
And well, but I mean, that result doesn't surprise me. It was predictable.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
You saw the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, because his inner monologue, like the script that he's creating, is an energetic match for not winning.
Yeah.
And so, and this is not about fake pump me up and positive self-talk, but I truly I do see, like, an area that many humans need to work on is their capacity to acknowledge, both acknowledge self and acknowledge others.
Yeah.
And then when others acknowledge them, be able to graciously receive that. And so this is another one of the trainings that we thread into the Aligned Leadership Program is the capacity, the ability to see the light in others and communicate that clearly and directly, so it has the greatest chance of landing for the other person. The other thing too, though, is then also being able to allow one's heart to open and be seen inside of your light and receive acknowledgement as a gift and a possible truth, a possible truth. Whereas, many people grow up and learn quite early on about, particularly through sarcastic cultures. Like, the sarcastic cultures can be really destructive in people's capacity to actually, like, personally acknowledge self, acknowledge others, or receive acknowledgement, because we don't know what we can't discern what's sincere, and because so much communication we receive as kids isn't sincere. We close off in order to protect ourselves, and so it can be very, very vulnerable to actually take a moment to look in the mirror and be like, okay, I didn't get today perfect, but I tell you what, I did do this well.
That's
like,
right.
That was a hard conversation, and I showed up. I didn't shy away. Okay, like, good job, Jamin. Good job. Or like, the moment when someone was was projecting onto you and you wanted to stand up and defend yourself, but instead you just like stayed quiet and great and just like received it and let someone move through their own process. It's just like, okay, that took humility. Good job. Just like these subtle moments of where we can just give ourselves just a touch of like validation that I'm showing up the best I can with what I've got right now. Did I get it perfect? Nah. But am I doing my best? Absolutely. And from my standpoint, like, brick by brick, we're able to cultivate a knowingness of self, of what our strengths are and what we're good at and what we're capable of. And then we can be a stand for that as a meaningful contribution to other people. Also, whilst being present to, these are my growth areas. These are areas where I just kind of suck, and then we can have humility around that as well.
That's exactly right.
It supports an overarching. It supports a humble way of being where we're not playing down our bigness in the world, and that's something I'm very passionate about, because I do see that people dim their light. For the fear of being cut down, or for the fear of standing out, when in truth that's actually what we're all here to do.
So it's time for rapid fire. Rapid
Let's do
fire
it.
is where we give you 5 questions or statements, and you just whatever comes top of mind. So what would 3 takeaways that you would like our audience to have from this podcast be?
Meditate on the quality of your life is your own creation. Like, you are 100% responsible for everything that you experience in life. Meditate on that, as that, like, coming to peace with that as a, now listen, I'm not going to call it fact or absolute truth, but it's a very empowering place to stand, because when we can engage with that, it brings the rest of our future. It puts the ball in my hands. I get to play. So that would be the first part. The second part would be to take the time to really get clear on who you're inspired to be in the world. And a great place to start there is to just have actually a simple place to start is having a think about, when you're on your deathbed, what would you love for others to say about who you are, and what you create, and what you stood for, and what you created in the world. Like, get a little external, a little esoteric, and peer in. Start there, because that's going to give you a pretty good goalposts and guiding posts of like how to define that. And then the next piece would be then being a critical inquiry of like, where am I living congruent with that, and where am I not living congruent with that? Where am I in alignment? Where am I not in alignment? And if you feel a stuckness around the layers of your life that don't feel in deep alignment, have humility, and then be willing to get some guidance to move beyond it. Because I guarantee you that whatever you are navigating, you are not the first person to navigate that. And there are ways out of stuckness. There are ways out of experience being trapped. And whether it's Mountains of Marathons or Vicki or another coach, like, be willing to be in vulnerable conversations around where you're at and what you desire, as there is something more expansive available to all of us in any given point in time. Granted, we're willing to show up and be transparent about where we're at and where we want to be.
For sure. So what is your perspective on failure?
So first of all, I think failure is contextual. And perhaps there are 2 layers that I'd like to speak into around that. Like, one is the paradigm of there is no such thing as failure. In other words, like, everything that happens in life is happening for us, not to us. And so that whatever shows up in our world, it's like it's an opportunity for reflection, an opportunity for growth. And so there's kind of like that macro growth mindset relationship with failure. Then the second thing is, I think failure, like in the micro, like the bit where you don't win the race, or the bit where you don't get the result that you were seeking, or make as many sales as you anticipated, or the girl says no when you ask her on the date, like whatever the thing is, it's like, for me, failure in those micro moments serve as an opportunity to be more in touch with my emotional body and where limiting beliefs may lie. As I think I see a lot of people shy away from the emotional discomfort that comes from moments of failure. And from my standpoint, like, maturing the relationship with the emotional body of being like, oh, ouch, this hurt. Like, I'm disappointed. Like, oh, that's sadness. I'm feeling sad about not winning the race, or I'm feeling sad about having given it my all and not gotten the result that I was seeking. I'm feeling sad about that. And then actually having some compassion for your sadness. It's like cool, like inside the spectrum of the emotional experience as a human being, the more we're able to expand our capacity to feel the fullness of the dense emotions that may come with the experience of failure, that also creates pathway for being able to experience the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the joy and bliss.
Yep.
Whereas I see a lot of humans only allow themselves to feel such a limited range of the emotional experience that's available inside this human body, because if we desire more of this, we have to be willing to go down here, and experience the density. So again, I see failure as an opportunity to powerfully embrace the discomfort that comes from the denser emotional experience, which, granted, we relate to that in a compassionate way, increases our capacity to be more in life. So that's one piece, and then and then the other piece too is then looking at the the limiting beliefs that we may hold around ourselves in relation to that. It's like, failure happens. What do I make that mean about me?
Yeah.
Like, am I a failure as a human being, or is it simply I actually just suck at that, or here's a skill that I need to mature?
I know. That's what I say. It's the opportunity.
It's opportunity, and so but it's also not about sugarcoating anything. It is about being willing to feel the fullness of disappointment, and then being in a meaningful reflection of how we can grow from that experience.
Yeah, I love that. I look at it too as I will never know joy unless I know sadness,
There you go. Exactly.
So, and
exactly.
the more intense of the feeling one way also can lead to that greater intense the other way too. So
100%.
Lots of good things. So what advice would you wish you had been given at the start of any one of your business? But when you first started out, what advice do you wish you would have been given, even if you wouldn't have listened to it?
yeah, totally. It would be, Jamin, you have your strengths, this is what they are, and Jamin, there are some things that you suck at, and you'll always and Jamin, you will always suck at these things, and that's okay.
Yes.
And so please go and get some professional support, like team build, bring people around you who are good at the things that you suck at, so you don't waste time, money, and energy trying to be good at the things that you suck at. That would be, and I'll get specific. Like, I'm really good at the people stuff. I'm really good at I love the human interaction, but administrative and logistical things, just not my forte. And I've spent like 13 years trying to get good at the organizational stuff, and I moved from a 2 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10. I invested so many money in courses and time and habits and training, and I just suck at it. And so as soon as I got myself a personal assistant and and some and a coach who supports me around accountability with goals, changed my life. All of a sudden I could just double down on what I'm really good at and know that the stuff that drains my energy is taken care of. If I knew that at 20.
Yeah. And that's really important, I think, for all leaders, especially those that are people that want to control everything and are not good delegators. That's I mean, when you build a team, it should be not all of you. It should be of the people that fill the gaps of where you are weak. And then you'll have an awesome, high-performing team.
That's right. Like, we're all in service to a grander vision and mission. It's like, and that was the bit that I had to come to terms with as well. I'm like, oh my God, there's people who are not only good at this stuff that I suck at, but they actually enjoy it.
I know.
I'm like,
how could they be
that was like a hurdle that I had to get around. But once I was like, oh man, they get a kick out of doing
accounting,
calendar, and like keeping my inbox at 0 and making sure that all the numbers add up. I'm like, oh,
have a good day.
I love that you humans exist in the world and that we're on the same page and team here.
Yeah, I'm happy to pay you, please.
That's right. Absolutely.
What is the top mistake that most people are making when they're trying to transform and they're just not doing it? They're not getting there. What is the mistake they're making?
Being being too obsessed with the gap between where they are now and where they want to be.
Small steps.
Yeah. And it's just like, because like that gap is suffering.
Yeah.
And it keeps people stuck and trapped. It's like, I want to be here, but I'm here. And this is a big, scary jump.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this here is not a place to get to. It's a place to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, it's like, what's the energy of this human? What's the energetic way in which this person shows up? And then how can I channel that energy now and show up consistent with the way this person shows up in the world? Because and that's like an inside out approach to transformation, of actually like being more in touch with how I show up moment by moment, knowing myself as someone who shows up moment by moment, congruent with who and how I want to be in the world, versus me not looking a particular way. It's more like, oh no, this possibility, this is someone who is disciplined. How can I bring discipline now? This is someone who is courageous. What does courage look like now? This is someone who is optimistic. What does optimism look like now? It's like allowing the transformation to come from the inside out, because then it purely becomes about the journey. And then we just get to be constantly tuned into the mirror that life is for how our inside, what our inner game looks like. The world is constantly reflecting that. That immediately takes us out of suffering and more in touch with, okay, well, this is where I'm at, and this is where there's more work to do. And so the journey continues.
And as you do those small wins, you set the small goals, the small wins, then you celebrate those small wins. And now you're enjoying the journey as opposed to dreading the climb.
Totally. That's it. And then, I mean, a key principle there too is to celebrate. Celebrate the small wins. It's not just the end of year party when we look at like everything's been achieved over the last 12 months where we take a moment to breathe and have a drink and celebrate. It's like, no, it should be in weekly reflection. Like, here are the wins from the week, or at least the month. Like, here are the wins from the month. Here are the opportunities from the month. Because all of that supports in being mindful of how we are actually growing and stepping more fully into who we're here to be in the world.
And I find a lot of times people have a hard time saying what a small win is. When you tell me what your small win was this week.
And, didn't have any.
It's like,
it's just
wait, excuse me, did you not wake up?
That's right.
Did you brush your teeth and not, have anything fall out?
Sure. This is good because, I mean, this circles back to the principle that I was speaking about earlier around acknowledgement. Of like just being able to get to the end of a day and just go like, hey, good job, like, Jamin, good job here.
Really.
You showed up there. And it wasn't even necessarily about the result. It's more so like, how did I show up today? And then being able to celebrate that. It's the same thing. Being able to source magic where it may not be obvious, being able to source gold, gold where it might be sitting just beneath the surface. It's an important skill.
Love that. The magic. All right, it is time now for those of you that are listening that you need to grab a pencil, paper, pen, whatever you have, crayons, to be able to write down the email or the website so that you can do further research, get in contact with Jamin. We have the website mountainsandmarathons.world/Australia23. Again, that's mountains and marathons, all squished together, .world/Australia23. That's the website you want to go to be able to check out more about the program. And he's on social media and Instagram with his name, JAMIN.HEPPELL, Jamin Heppell. And I'm going to let him talk about his Facebook community that you can get to become part of.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vicki. So, for those of you that would like to get a little more in touch with the world of mountains and marathons and how we contribute to people living in deeper and leading in deeper alignment, become part of our free Facebook community. It's called Living Aligned. And so as part of Living Aligned, every couple of times a week, we're delivering free content. We call them Live for Fives, where we just go live for 5 minutes and speak about a simple distinction of living aligned or leading aligned. And it's an opportunity to remain directly engaged with us, ask questions, and then also find out about the bigger opportunities that exist inside the world of mountains and marathons.
Awesome. So again, that's his Facebook page, using his name to find it. Again, mountainsandmarathons.world/Australia 2030. Well, it has been wonderful. You gave so much rich information, so many tips, insights, and good stories. I have had a wonderful time talking with you tonight. And thank you for being a guest. And as always, I end this with reminding everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Nettling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nettling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.